Due process under fire, Kristi Noem faces brutal questioning over Kilmargo Abrego Garcia. What this reveals about the administration will shock you.
I now recognize Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Mr. Kilmargo Abrego Garcia's case, Madam Secretary. But my first question for you is a pretty simple one. It's basic civics. Which branch of government does the Constitution give the authority to interpret what the law is, the judiciary or the executive branch?
Sir, going forward, the interpretation of the law, you make the laws in this body. The judicial branch makes sure that they have integrity and they're applied properly to individuals.
So I'm just going to take that as the judiciary branch. Now, let's focus for a second on what the judiciary branch has said about this case. We know the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that, notwithstanding your statements under oath here today, that Mr. Kilmargo Abrego Garcia was afforded due process, he was in fact not afforded due process, because then if he were, you would have seen the withholding order that did not permit him to be deported to El Salvador. Now you allege, and I guess the Attorney General alleges, that he's a member of MS-13. That may very well be the case. And if he is, now that that is a foreign terrorist organization, certainly the immigration laws would allow him, and in fact require him, to be deported. I certainly would support that. But the problem that we have here is what you allege, what Ms. Green alleges, what the Attorney General alleges, is not the judiciary. You don't get to decide whether or not he is an MS-13 member. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Judge Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, very conservative, addressed this argument. He said, the government asserts that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident in its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order. Will you commit right now to give Mr. Abrego Garcia that process where you can prove your allegation that he is a member of MS-13?
Congressman, that judge that you just quoted did not say he was not a member of MS-13. Who did say that he was a member of MS-13 was law enforcement officers that encountered this individual.
Yeah, he knows that. This is a Fourth Circuit judge. He knows all of what the evidence is, and he's saying if that evidence... So you're not going to commit to follow this order? You won't commit to follow this court order?
By the way, he identified
Madam Secretary,
himself.
I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering. Stop filibustering.
By gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
so
sir, and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately? Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
no.
investigators and law
that is
enforcement
you making that determination.
Against him. If you don't
the court has considered all that. The judge has considered all that, Madam Secretary. And if you would be quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time, you are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What steps have you taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
advocating for a
Absolutely.
court order, Madam
Gone to the
Secretary.
mat for this
The
man
court
who
order
has terrorized
says
people
that
in
you
traffic
must take
with human
steps
beings.
to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the Constitution.
Gentleman's
and you
time
should
has
fight too for
expired.
due process.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize...
In this explosive exchange, we see a stark clash between Congress and the Trump administration over the handling of Kilmargo Abrego Garcia's case. At the heart of the confrontation is a fundamental question of civics: who gets to decide what the law is? Dan Goldman, representing congressional oversight, presses the point repeatedly. Under the U.S. Constitution, interpreting the law is the role of the judiciary, not the executive branch. This is critical because it underlines one of the foundational checks and balances in our government. The Supreme Court, in a unanimous 9-0 decision, made it clear that Mr. Abrego Garcia was entitled to due process. Yet, despite this, Secretary Noem's testimony suggests a reluctance to fully comply, raising urgent concerns about executive overreach. What makes this moment particularly striking is how it illuminates the tension between claims of national security and constitutional rights. The administration alleges Garcia is an MS-13 member, a foreign terrorist organization affiliate, and uses this as justification for bypassing standard legal procedures. But as Goldman points out, allegations alone do not replace the rule of law. Even the Fourth Circuit judge, a conservative authority, emphasized that evidence must be presented in a legal forum to ensure due process is upheld. This isn't just a technicality, it's a cornerstone of democracy. Every individual, regardless of the accusations against them, deserves a fair hearing under the law. When a government official sidesteps that process, it sets a dangerous precedent for unchecked executive power. Another layer of concern here is the communication and accountability. Goldman repeatedly asks what steps the administration has taken to follow the court's mandate. The response, that Garcia is in his home country and has been treated appropriately, directly conflicts with the Supreme Court's determination. This shows a chilling disconnect between executive action and judicial authority, raising questions about respect for constitutional checks and the independence of the judiciary. For viewers trying to understand U.S. governance, this is a real-world illustration of how the separation of powers works and what can happen when it's ignored. From a broader perspective, this hearing is also about the principle of due process itself. The case of Kilmargo Abrego Garcia is emblematic of the tension between law enforcement, immigration enforcement, and civil liberties. While the government may argue that national security and crime prevention justify certain measures, the courts exist to ensure that individual rights are not trampled in the process. By refusing to fully acknowledge the court's active requirements, steps to facilitate Garcia's legal proceedings, the executive is essentially placing its interpretation above that of the judicial system. This is not a small detail, it's a fundamental constitutional concern that every American should understand. Finally, this exchange highlights the role of congressional oversight in protecting democracy. Representatives like Dan Goldman are tasked with holding executive officials accountable. When an administration disregards court orders, it becomes the responsibility of Congress to question, document, and push for compliance. For viewers, this is a lesson in civic responsibility. The system only works when checks and balances are enforced by multiple branches of government and citizens remain informed and engaged. In conclusion, this hearing isn't just about one individual or one case. It's a test of constitutional principles in real time. It underscores the importance of due process, the separation of powers, and the vital role of congressional oversight. If the judiciary's authority can be ignored without consequence, every citizen's rights could be at risk. This is why understanding these hearings matters. It's not just political theater, it's a direct look at how the foundations of American democracy are defended or challenged. For those who want to stay informed and see these critical issues unpacked with clarity and insight, make sure you subscribe to Left Lens. We break down the most important political moments so you can understand not just what happened, but why it matters and how it impacts all of us.